Mrs. DeLanie Young it is.
Yes.
Yeah. From what I've found out is you're a mother of 3 boys, which you're raising here in Telluride, which is really interesting, but not the reason we're talking here today. Or maybe we will, in a way. Just the day before yesterday, as we're sitting here, the town of Telluride had its mayoral elections. Is that correct? Or how do you say that?
We had our regular election, which included other items as well, but in fact, the mayor race was also on that ballot.
What else was on the ballot? Just because
we had 2 seats open on our town council, and we had votes for funding the library, which is enormous for us. It's a great resource here in town and for the larger community. And we had a wastewater treatment plant ballot measure. There were a couple of state measures for infrastructure, and we had our school board election as well.
So, important elections.
Yes.
You are sitting here because you won.
I won.
You won. You are the new mayor of Telluride. How long is the term?
4 years.
Right. So things can be done in those 4 years. Before we get to me asking you, which I'm really interested in, what it is that you want to do, I wanted to ask you something. Could you please, for people who have no idea what Telluride is, introduce your town?
Ooh, okay.
How would you explain Telluride to an outsider?
Telluride is an extremely small town. We have around 2,000 people who live here full-time, year-round. It's a very small town nestled in what we call a box canyon. There's literally one way in and one way out on a main thoroughfare. It has unparalleled beauty, which I believe is what draws people here from all over the world. And the people who live here year-round, overall, we are a very tight-knit, cohesive community. And it is a struggle to live here. It's very remote. It's about 1.5 hours to the nearest city of any size for shopping or a hospital. But we choose to live here for various reasons. For me, it was the school for my children, and the beauty, and the summers are quite wonderful.
Where did you originate from, if I may ask?
I was born and raised in Joliet, Illinois, about 40 minutes southwest of Chicago.
Okay, so that's different.
Yes.
It's very different. What we haven't mentioned, and our viewers can look it up, what I always find amazing coming from Austria, which is supposed to be, or which is an alpine, a mountainous country. This little town is at a height of
just under 9,000 feet.
Right, which makes it 2,700 meters.
Thank you.
Yeah, but there are mountains that go up a little bit further here. So the
Yes.
highest peaks are 4,000 something meters in.
Yeah.
So higher than our highest mountain in Austria, just to give people a feel. I've been coming to Telluride since 1996 or 7, I can't remember really. And you said it's a very small town. It's a tight-knit community of the people who live here. One of the things that has happened to Telluride over the last 20, 30 years is that it has become it goes up and down, the most exclusive skiing resort and resort town globally. And that, of course, must be an aspect as well. How do you experience that? Are there 2 Tellurides or not?
I think that's actually a good way to describe it. There are 2 Tellurides. You are fortunate to be here now, which is what we call off-season. It's quiet. The people who are here are full-time residents for the most part. Parents of children who are attending school, people who own and run businesses and have employees. Yet there is a large faction of locals who leave during this time because the other Telluride, when we are in the height of our summer and winter, and our population, in all reality, there are a couple of weekends in the summer that our population is 10 times the size of our normal population. 20,000 people will be here. And the people who live and work here work so hard that they escape during off season and go away to other places. Just to catch their breath.
Not surprisingly. I mean, Telluride had always, since the ski resort started in the 70s, slowly late 70s, always had a very strong winter season, but over the last, I would say 15, maybe even 20 years, the summers have picked up with all the festivals. Just for people who don't know that, there's an extremely active and very interesting summer program. There's Bluegrass, Wine Festival, the Mountain Film Festival, the Film Festival,
yes,
which has become so important now. There's original thinkers and so on and so forth. I'm sure this leads to certain conflicts, but as a non-resident, that is not something I want to poke into. But what I would like to do, really liking this town so much and having many really good friends here, I would like to ask you, you've campaigned on several things, and now you will be able to put them into practice, of course, in communication with the community. What is it? 19th November. What's going to happen? How are you going to kick this off? What are you going to do? How are you going to spend the next 4 years?
I currently am on town council as a regular member, and I have been doing that for the past 4 years, and I have been intimately involved with a lot of projects over those 4 years. I see this mayoral position as elevating that a little bit higher. In reality, the mayor is, for the most part, equal to the other members of council. Our vote counts the same. The difference is, the only difference really, are three things. The mayor, myself, I will set the agenda. So when issues come up, I will make sure that they are heard in front of the full council. I sign documents. If we pass an ordinance or a resolution, I do that as well. And I lead the meeting. Those are the three primary differences for the council members. Before I was elected to town council, I was the local housing programs manager for the Regional Housing Authority. I have now 13 years of knowledge base here in regards to housing for employees. That is one of our biggest challenges and one of our biggest issues. And I am very comfortable in that realm, and we will continue as a town to do our best to help provide housing in the way that we have been, which is money and infrastructure. There are other local municipalities who perhaps have land and no money, and we can come to the table with money in a partnership to help perpetuate more housing for people. We have a couple of other big issues. We have a wastewater treatment plant that is 30 years old, and we need to correct some things to accommodate federal and state regulations that we are facing in order to have the cleanest water leaving to go back into our water system. Before the interview, we were discussing how dry it is here right now, and I don't see any snow on the horizon for us in the next week to 2 weeks. 2 years ago, we had one of the worst winters of all time, and it definitely affected our economy. We are a tourist-based economy. And besides that, the town of Telluride, we are at the headwaters of this watershed. So the water that we protect here is vitally important to everyone downstream from us. Farms, animals, the outdoor economy of fishing and rafting, it all is connected. So we are the stewards of the watershed, and it's something I'm paying very close attention to.
I know people that will really like to hear that, and from what I've heard, you follow through on your word. Now let's stick with that. I mean, there are other issues. I think there's the, how do you call that, Seilbahn? My God, I can't think of the English word. Well, the thing that brings people up the mountain.
Gondola.
The gondola.
Yes.
Oh my God. So there are several issues pertaining to the town, but let's stay with that. Telluride is something for me also like a laboratory. It's a unique place, but it also has equivalent places around the world, places in the mountains. The dryness that we've spoken about, that we believe is an aspect of climate change and is not something that is going to go away in our lifetime and the lifetime of kids, and the effect certainly will go beyond that. Now, let me ask you, what are your thoughts on Telluride within that? I mean, it's the water, but it's not only the water. How do you think about it, and how do you see the town? Because if it has such an impact, which I also believe it does, then the economy, which is so heavily based on tourism, well, it will have to think a bit.
Yes, agreed. One of the other things I've been doing the last 4 years while I'm on council is I also am a member of environmental coalitions. I served on the Eco Action Partners for a couple of years, and I have continually served on the Ecology Commission. And we are trying to approach things going forward with a more action-based attitude. We just had our meeting on Wednesday, actually, for Ecology Commission, and we are doing our work plan. Telluride, because we are so remote, and we are a world-class international destination, the carbon footprint that we have is much larger than any of us would like to admit to, but it is a fact. People have to fly to get here. People have to drive to get here. That is just the fact of the matter. We, as a community overall, want to strive towards carbon neutrality, sustainability, and do that in any way possible. The wheels of government move slow, for better or worse. There are processes that have to be attained. I think that being a world-class international destination, one of the best things that we can do is to educate anyone and everyone and become an example to people who visit here. Every stride that we make to protect the environment, to reverse something that we have done to contribute to climate change and try to reverse that or at least alleviate that, we can send that knowledge home. This is what we're doing. We have brochures that say, live like a local or be like a local. And if we can set a good example, I think that that can potentially shift someone's attitude in their home when they go back home. I'm a lifelong learner. I think if anyone learns one thing every day, then you've had a good day.
This is true what you say, because I can personally attest to that. Telluride was the first place, I don't know how many years ago, where the grocery market, we don't need to advertise now, it starts with C, but no, actually did not pass out plastic bags. And then Paris followed, and now the European Union, I think, is making that a law for all European member states. So I think you're absolutely right. So off the top of your head, can you imagine a few other things that you'd like to see?
Absolutely. We have been working behind the scenes for over a year on single-use plastic ban in town. It is complicated due to state law that is in place. And as a town elected official, myself and my colleagues are watching closely. We are hoping that in March of 2020, the state will rescind some language in the Colorado law that right now does not allow a municipality technically to ban plastics. It was originally thought of as a good model because they wanted to encourage plastics recycling in the 90s, which was a great idea at the time, but we've come so far and now we see the reality of what plastics are doing, and there is no market for plastics recycling to speak of anymore. And now we need to go back, and instead of reduce, reuse, recycle, we need to think of refuse, reduce, reuse, recycle. Don't buy the product. And if we can be patient and wait for the state to do the right thing, hopefully, I believe municipalities and cities in Colorado will follow. We are waiting with bated breath to see that come through. It would mean no more single-use plastic cutlery from a store. Takeout containers would have to change. All of these things would have to be looked at differently. And even though we are in the mountains, nowhere near the ocean, and some people say your plastic waste, does it really matter? You're so far from the ocean. Well, yes, because it all goes somewhere else. And so that's one item I would really like to help facilitate, and hopefully in this first year of my term. And we have a regional transportation system that is quite new. It's only a year and a half to 2 years old, but we just added another member regionally. So the more we can encourage and educate about our regional transportation and the more we can expand it, it will reduce our carbon footprint significantly. And the other big one for me right now for climate change locally to make a big difference is composting. We have more than 60% of our waste stream leaving Telluride and the general area here is compostable. That's extra weight on more trucks, which increases the greenhouse gas emissions from the vehicles. We have a product that we could keep here and turn into something that's usable for yards and gardens, and it's a very big piece of the pie for us, compostable waste.
Interesting. I know some people who would also like to hear that because they have been working on this for a long time. And let me ask you this, like in this way. You have a number of non-profits and organizations here who are interested in working for all kinds of topics. Extinction, various aspects of agriculture. The composting is part of work that people have done here already over the years. Do I understand it that you actually are actively inviting those NGOs and NPOs that are in Telluride and the region to contribute and to work together with you to come up with the actual pragmatic solutions that not only this place needs?
Yes, the short answer is yes. Collaboration for me is the key element to any of these projects working for us, whether it's the wastewater treatment plant or having a better relationship with the school district to come up with ideas that a community-wide effort could happen for composting, transportation, all of it. So yes, we have, I would say, at least 7, maybe 8 organizations that are interested in environmental impacts. And at our meeting just a couple of days ago, we talked about that fact and the need to collaborate in a stronger way so that it becomes not competitive, but collaborative. And it shouldn't be competitive. We all want the same end result. And we have the group Eco Action Partners that I mentioned earlier has done a lot of work on helping green the neighborhood. They help with green business certification, and we have a green lights program so that residents can buy LED lights and retrofit their entire house. And it's a small step, but in the end, if enough people do it, it's a large step. So yes, collaboration with these groups is imperative.
So private-public partnerships, and anyone who's got anything to contribute is welcome to come to you and say, hey, I've got an idea, and yeah, thank you. Let's shift gear a little and kind of leave Telluride a little bit. I wanted to ask you, looking at your biography and the things that you've done and that people are saying about you around town, what motivated you to go into politics? I mean, you have 3 kids, you have other things that you were doing. It's a very demanding job. It takes a lot of time and energy and nerves. What drives you to serve the community in such a way?
To go back quite far, I believe that my father was my first influence. He was involved in the community always when I was a child. He served on the village board, he served on the school board, he would volunteer at events in the community. So I grew up watching my father do that, and we were very close, and it was an inspiration. And from a very young age, I wanted to help people. And at my core, I'm a public servant. That's what I do. I want to look after people. I think my most important job I've ever had has been being a mother. I think it had taught me also, being a mother, how important it is that everyone needs help, everyone needs compassion, because it isn't just about us. We're all connected. And everything has a ripple effect. So if the family down the street is having a hard time and no one is doing anything about it, it actually affects my family. So I had a situation where I had my job and then I had a shift in career, and it was very sudden. And someone approached me at the park and said, "Why aren't you running for town council? You no longer have a conflict at your other job. Why don't you do this?" And as I said, I'm a lifelong learner. I love knowledge. I love learning new things. And this last 4 years, I have learned more than I ever thought I could at a career. It's always something new. I never thought I would know so much about a wastewater treatment plant, a sewage plant. And it's very interesting. And it is hard work. It's a lot of reading. It's a lot of extra research. I was a librarian before I moved to Telluride, and I love research and knowledge, as I've said several times. I also am very fortunate in that my children, I have 3 sons, have always been very supportive of me as a single mother. It's reciprocity in my household. And because we live in such a small town and you can walk anywhere and we are very insulated, and overall we're very safe here. And I felt comfortable knowing that I could take this on and always know where my kids were. And that helps. It really does take a village to raise a child. And then a few years ago, 5 years ago, I met a scientist here in Telluride who is now my husband. And it is really with his support that I am able to take this one step further and do a job that's going to be even more demanding as the mayor. I'm a public servant. I can't walk away from what I am, and that's what I'm doing.
Yeah, shout out to the kids and the husband and the community. I was wondering if I would ask you this, but as we as Europeans are traveling around here, mainly in order to communicate and understand the US better, I will ask you that. When you view the US from the outside, it appears to be, and it's not the only place in the world right now, extremely contentious in the political field, vitriolic, full of very, very unpleasant rhetoric, and what seems to be deep antagonism that I personally have not experienced or can't remember in my lifetime. How do you view that? Is that true or not? And how would you, as the representative of a community, say that one could alleviate that, conquer that, heal that?
That's a big question.
It's a big one, I know, but but you spoke about community, you spoke about those essential things, and so many people are so separated in the world. So maybe somewhere there's your answer. I don't know.
I think looking at it from within the United States, that we, people in my world, and I think that number is growing, see it how people viewing it from outside the US are viewing it. It's embarrassing, it's very upsetting, and again, I go back to Telluride being a world-class international destination. I believe that people come from outside of the US and think this is what it's like. And when they get to come to a small town and have a few conversations with people who live here, they understand that it's not all crazy. And some of us are very confused by what's going on and upset by what's going on as well. And I think having conversations is at the core of understanding everything and having that personal interaction. We're in a time of technology that people are very disconnected, and what they see on the TV, what they see on Facebook, what they see on Twitter, it's becoming reality, and this is what's real. I would encourage anyone and everyone to just have conversations This experience goes back for me several years. When I was still living in Durango, Colorado, and my kids were quite small, I picked up a woman hitchhiker just outside of Durango on my way to Telluride to visit my brother, who lived here at the time. And it was a young German woman. And she rode in the car with myself, and I had 2 children at the time. And we had the most amazing conversation for 2 hours driving up to Telluride, and her view of what she thought life was like in the United States was accurate to an extent, but she was missing an entire other large part of it. And I think it really affected her. And she stayed the night with my family that night, and we had breakfast the next morning. And she said, "The things you have told me, no one in my community understands this, and I can't wait to go home and share that story." And you very briefly brought up original thinkers. I am so grateful that that event has come to our town. It's based on storytelling, and I think that the communication is key in globally understanding these different places. And the US, you're right, is not the only place facing these contentious attitudes. Locally, to bring it home locally, that divisiveness in our country has absolutely infiltrated this small town of Telluride. That is also one of the reasons that I decided to take this chance and run for mayor. I bring a level of compassion to all of my work that I felt was missing, and it was harming us. Having that compassion and understanding that every single person is going through something and that they are going to defend their way of life is important. I also believe in the greater good for the community as a whole, and so any decision that is made could affect someone in a way they do not like, but if it benefits the whole, we have to help each other get over those obstacles.
And communication is the only thing that does that.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Let's round it up. Out of all the things that are coming to us constantly now because of that media saturated, oversaturated world that we're living in, what is the single most topic or thing that worries you the most, that you're concerned about the most?
I am and have always been a seeker of and a defender of the truth. And interestingly, taking it back to original thinkers, I 2 years ago went and listened to several discussions, and a British journalist was there on a panel and said, "The truth doesn't matter." And it viscerally affected me. After the discussion was finished, I approached him, and I don't normally do that. I let people go about their way. We all have a job to do. That's your job. And I said, "Do you really believe the truth doesn't matter?" And he was taken aback, and he said, "Do you think it matters?" And I said, "I think it's the only thing that matters." There's an argument that some people make that my truth is different from your truth, and their truth is different from their truth. Facts, things on record cannot be, well, they can be erased. We hope that they won't be erased. And we need the facts and fact-based truth, climate change. We need that to get out there to the people. And I think this media deluge that we are drowning in has so much misinformation and lacks truth in so many instances. And for some people who either don't have time, don't have the education, or just are completely apathetic and don't care, that misinformation, as it gets disseminated among the masses, is causing the divisiveness and causing people to do things that I don't think they would normally do if they were given the truth. And that is my biggest concern with this media deluge, is people are hearing things that are completely incorrect, and they're basing their opinions and their choices on those things, and it is effectually propagating hatred, intolerance, and those are things that we just have to put a stop to.
Given that, coming to the US as a European, one of the things, and that still is the case, there's always seems to be some hope, some thrive forward. The horizon is extending. We're still going, aren't we? We're still going. So given what you've just said, which I think is true, what makes you hopeful?
Actually, being elected makes me hopeful. I am still in a little bit of shock. I thought the race would be much closer, and there was quite a large margin, and it gives me hope that people in this community are listening, and they are communicating with each other, and they care about the truth. My whole campaign was fact-based. I took the high road. I didn't make personal attacks. I don't believe in any of that. I'm not a politician. I'm an elected official, and I think there is a distinct difference, especially in this country. And it gives me hope that the people in my community are paying attention, and I think that they will happily spread that word through people they meet. And it's been happening in other places in this country. November 5th was a big night for the United States. There were a lot of elections that made a difference. And I'm hopeful that people will continue to listen to each other and talk to each other.
So let me just repeat that. So you're not hopeful because you as an individual, as DeLanie Young, have won, but that what you worked on, that what you tried to communicate, the content, and that you see yourself as not a politician for the politicking sake, but for being a servant to the community and fulfilling your role in that because you happen to have a talent for it as well.
Yes.
Good. Good luck. I wish you all the best.
Thank you so much.
And we'll stay in conversation.